The movie begins in Kosovo during the 1990s conflict with Yugoslavia. Two American mercenaries are captured and locked in an abandoned building. From his cell, Karl Thomasson watches as his partner, Mason Stewart, is brutally beaten. The guards throw Mason back into the cell, broken and paralyzed. Despite his injuries, Mason jokes while admitting he won't survive. He asks Karl to end his life and escape. Reluctantly, Karl agrees. Before dying, Mason gives Karl a medal from his last army tour, asking him to deliver it to his daughter as a keepsake. Mason regrets choosing his military career over family. Karl then smothers him, removes his dentures, and uses the wire inside to pick the cell lock. Nearby, one guard sits with his back to Karl, while another assaults a captive woman. She notices Karl's escape attempt and distracts the abuser. Karl silently kills the seated guard, then fights and kills the other. He frees the woman, who vents her grief and rage by striking her dead abuser before leaving. 3 months later, in Long Island, New York, Nicole Stewart, an English professor, struggles to keep her class focused. Most students ignore her, especially 3 football jocks in the back. She warns them that their grades and their place on the team are at risk if they keep disrupting. She also scolds another troublemaker, Josh Silver. Meanwhile, Karl returns to the U.S. and meets his fellow mercenary friend Rahmel, who helps him track down Mason's daughter, Nicole. Karl arranges to meet her at a restaurant. On the way, the 3 jocks follow Nicole and pressure her to guarantee them passing grades, but she refuses. Karl notices the confrontation and grabs a bottle of red pepper, preparing for trouble. When the jocks grow more aggressive, he steps in and easily defeats all 3, his mercenary training outmatching their size and strength. Karl later introduces himself to Nicole, and they talk while walking around campus. She vents about the jocks, explaining that most faculty members hand out easy A's to athletes, since the football team is chasing a national championship. When Karl offers to help, she brushes it off, insisting she can handle things herself. She also refuses the medal from Mason, admitting she barely knew her father and telling Karl to keep it. Meanwhile, the jocks train on the football field under Coach Bill Braden. He pushes them to hit harder and even threatens to bench Bo Robinson if he doesn't play more aggressively. Worried about losing his spot, Bo attacks a teammate, sparking a brawl. Braden lets it go until his assistant warns him that officials from the Athletic Association are coming for a surprise drug test. Braden quickly calls Thad and Muscle, the other 2 jocks, to prepare. He also asks about Nicole's report on their grades. The boys assure him they'll take care of it, clearly suggesting they plan something nasty. In the locker room, Thad and Muscle prepare for their drug tests by strapping bags of someone else's urine under their shirts. They've been using steroids to bulk up, which the Athletic Association bans. Coach Braden knows and even encourages it, which is why he warned them earlier. That night, Nicole senses someone following her on her way home. She's suddenly ambushed and left badly injured. The next morning, Karl and Rahmel spot the newspaper reporting the attack and rush to the hospital. Nicole lies unconscious with internal injuries, broken ribs, and a concussion. When she briefly wakes, she suffers a PTSD episode, hallucinating her masked attacker beating her again. Karl comforts her until she calms and falls back asleep. Determined to protect Mason's daughter, Karl and Rahmel decide to hunt down her attacker. They visit their tech-savvy friend Ed, who can set up identities and access. Karl wants to pose as Nicole's substitute English professor while she recovers, giving him cover to investigate the jocks he suspects attacked her. He also believes the team is using performance-enhancing drugs. Confident in his background, Karl explains he holds a doctorate in literature and has posed as a teacher during past undercover missions. On Monday, Karl starts his cover as Nicole's substitute professor. Before class, Josh argues with Bo until Thad steps in, reminding Bo that Josh is his old friend. Thad then pushes Josh to bulk up with steroids so he can join the football team and avoid worrying about grades. Karl arrives dressed like a proper academic, only to be stopped at the door by Coach Braden, who greets him politely but requests leniency for his athletes. Once inside, Karl introduces himself and uses the Vietnam War as a lesson on how smaller forces can defeat larger armies. Spotting Bo, the same jock he beat at the restaurant, Karl calls him up to demonstrate. He clears space, tells Bo to swing, and effortlessly dodges his punches before taking him down with precision. The class watches as Karl proves his point. Skill can overcome size. Later, Bo vents to Braden in the gym, furious at being humiliated. Meanwhile, Ed monitors everything from his surveillance van. Through his cameras, he also catches jocks telling Braden they're running out of steroids. When Braden leaves campus to resupply, Ed tips off Rahmel to follow him. They record video proof of Braden buying the drugs from a young dealer and later share the evidence with Karl. Rahmel tails the dealer through town, eventually roughing him up and stealing samples of the steroids. Ed traces the dealer back to Soldier Hill, a gang tied to a local sports bar and connected to a larger Italian mob family. Karl decides to set up surveillance on the bar with hidden cameras and mics. To strengthen the operation, he asks their friend Andrea to pose as a waitress. At first, she refuses, unwilling to act like a flirty ditz, but when she learns it's for Mason's daughter, she reluctantly agrees. Ed sneaks into the bar disguised as an electrician, fixing the jukebox, planting the surveillance gear. Meanwhile, Karl visits Nicole at the hospital. She's healing but still resents his militant approach. Even so, she softens and thanks him for helping her. That night, Karl and Ed monitor from their van, while Rahmel watches from inside the bar. Andrea arrives in full disguise, playing the part with a ditzy smile and padded curves to look convincing. Their target, Soldier Hill's leader Tony Lo Russo, sits with his crew as usual. When Andrea gets close, Tony quickly takes a liking to her. Karl encourages Andrea to keep fueling Tony's interest. During a wet t-shirt contest, she pulls off a bold stunt that electrifies the crowd. Tony, completely hooked, orders his men to cheer for her, ensuring she wins. After changing back into dry clothes, Tony approaches Andrea, offers her a drink, and begins flirting. Their moment is interrupted when two men arrive, one a chemistry professor who manufactures the steroids, the other a supplier of raw materials. The supplier complains about rising costs, demanding higher payment per batch. Instead of negotiating, Tony and his men savagely beat him to death. The horrified professor flees the bar. Tony then returns, ready to continue drinking with Andrea, but the atmosphere shifts again when his father, Vincent, enters with bodyguards. Knowing this is business, Tony sends Andrea away. Vincent asks about the steroid operation, and Tony proudly assures him everything is running smoothly. After the bar closes and Andrea leaves, Vincent questions the bar manager's expenses. His cruelty mirrors Tony's, showing he has no problem brutalizing his own men. Meanwhile, Karl and Ed track down the fleeing chemistry professor to his lab. Karl introduces himself as someone who can protect the professor's family from Tony's threats if he cooperates. The next day, Karl visits Nicole, who worries about his team's war against the mob. Thinking of her late father, she asks how Karl would feel dying alone in a foreign land. Karl shrugs it off, saying death could just as easily come from something mundane, like getting hit by a bus in the suburbs. Elsewhere, Coach Braden secretly meets Tony, revealed to be a former college football player. Braden hands over cash for steroids and admits he hired Tony's men to attack Nicole. He hints he may ask the same for Karl. That night, the chemistry professor meets Tony's men for a payout, but Karl and Rahmel ambush them, dropping the gangsters with taser guns. They tell the professor to take his family on vacation until their mission is done. In the school gym, Josh trains alone, pumped up on the steroids pushed on him by the jocks. He collapses mid-set from a heart attack and dies on the bench. Karl later discovers his body and the bottle of veterinary-grade steroids he overdosed on. He confronts Coach Braden, revealing Josh's death and threatening to expose both Braden and Tony's gang to the police and athletic association, armed with video proof of their steroid use and deals. Karl then lectures his class on the dangers of steroids, openly sharing that Josh died from peer pressure and overdose. Fearing for his career, Braden lures Karl to the school's pool arena, where Tony and his men wait to ambush him. Outnumbered and dodging a baseball bat, Karl still overpowers the mobsters. He finishes Tony by slashing his throat with a lens from his glasses, sending him bleeding into the pool. One underling surrenders, promising to stay away from Karl. The mobsters stuff Tony's body into a trunk and take it to Vincent. Furious at his son's death, Vincent beats the survivor for failing. Karl still lives while Tony is dead. Desperate, the underling reveals the location of Karl's surveillance van, but Vincent executes him on the spot. Inside his van, Ed is distracted watching a sports match. Unaware Vincent is outside ready to strike. When Vincent knocks, Ed assumes it's Rahmel and opens the door, only to be gunned down instantly. At the hospital, Karl gives Nicole a book as she recovers, but then gets word of Ed's death. He rushes to the van, where Rahmel and Andrea are already there. Beside Ed's body, they find he had recorded his own murder, leaving clear evidence that Vincent killed him. With no more hesitation, the team prepares for all-out war. That night, Andrea disguises herself again as the ditzy waitress and arrives at the Low Rousseau estate in a taxi, claiming to have a date with Tony. When the gates open for her, Karl and Rahmel slip in behind. Inside, Andrea is greeted by Vincent's bodyguard, who is openly attracted to her. Pretending to know nothing about Tony's death, she flirts back and plays along with his crude advances. When his guard is down, Andrea turns on him, and a fight breaks out. Though initially overpowered by his size, she eventually gains the upper hand. Straddling him, she strangles him into submission, until Vincent suddenly knocks on the door. To avoid suspicion, Andrea pretends they're having sex. Vincent leaves, and moments later, the bodyguard dies. Andrea takes his gun and slips out. Outside, Karl and Rahmel use a remote-controlled camera to map the estate. Andrea rejoins them, changes into a more practical outfit, and confirms Vincent is inside. On the feed, they spot an erotic party underway. Knowing the women must be cleared out first, the team makes their move. They infiltrate the building with silenced weapons and split up. Karl eliminates guards one by one. Andrea guns down another before escorting the women out, and Rahmel cuts through enemies with his sword. Reinforcements storm in from below, turning the halls into a firefight. Karl is shot in the shoulder, but Andrea covers him while Rahmel slices down the gunman before he can finish Karl off. Meanwhile, Vincent attempts to flee in a bulletproof car with his bodyguard. Andrea spots them and alerts the others. Bullets bounce off the vehicle, but Rahmel leaps onto the roof, stabbing his sword through and killing the driver. The car skids to a stop, forcing Vincent out. He fires at Karl, but Karl seizes the car and pins him against a wall and stacked fuel barrels. Trapped, Vincent is crushed to death. Fuel spills everywhere. The mercenaries light cigarettes in victory. Then Karl tosses his lighter, igniting the car and Vincent's corpse in flames. The next day, the trio visits Nicole in the hospital. She's recovering well. Karl introduces Rahmel and Andrea before Nicole gives him a Russian book as thanks for protecting her. Soon after, Karl departs with his team for their next mission. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.